So Samsung have brought out their brand new line of Galaxy tablets, the S8 series, and amongst those is the Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra. And after waiting for ages and ages for my pre-order or my order to arrive, it finally did, and I managed to get my hands on the Samsung Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra. Now, as you can see, this thing is absolutely huge. It measures about 14.6 inches diagonally in terms of its screen size. So it is probably the largest tablet on the market at the moment, and it absolutely dwarfs my old S7 in size. I'm sorry guys, I couldn't bring you an unboxing video. When I got it, I was just so excited that I had to open it straight away. So instead, I'm going to be bringing you this review today. Now, my Tab S7 was amazing, was working fine, and I loved every bit of it. However, my son did drop it on concrete and the screen smashed. Well, had a massive crack in it. It was still working, pen was working, everything, but I went into Samsung store and I saw this thing and I fell in love with it pretty much instantly, and I just had to have it. So I've since, ooh, the screen turned on. So I've since replaced my Tab S7 with this bad boy here. Now, as with pretty much all of my reviews, I'm not going to focus on the really techie side of things, you know, benchmarks and tech specs and all of that nonsense. You guys can Google up a spec sheet and there are plenty of reviews that do that for you. I want to bring you real world usage, what my thoughts of this tablet are, and you know, from using it, what my opinions on it are. Now, this Tab S8 Ultra features a Super AMOLED 120Hz HDR10 display and comes packed in with Android 12 with One UI 4.1. It comes in a range of configurations starting from the 128GB version to the 512 storage version, but it has expandable memory up to 1TB through the SD card slot and has the 8GB, 12GB and 16GB RAM models as well. Now, the one I have in my hands is the Wi-Fi model with 256GB of storage and 12GB of RAM. So I'm going to put this tab down here because I don't want to be flinging it around. To begin with, let's talk about the size. As I said, this thing has a massive 14.6 inch display and it is huge. It's actually bigger than my MacBook Air. Now, because of the screen size, it has a 16:10 aspect ratio, which is wider and taller than your average tablet. Now, because of this, people have said it's a bit awkward to hold in landscape mode, so holding it out landscape like this and using it, and it's actually easier to hold in portrait. However, I prefer to use my tabs most of the time in landscape mode, and I've not really had an issue with this. Now, the tab itself is actually super thin. It's thinner than my iPhone, it's thinner than my old Tab S7, it's even thinner than my wife's Galaxy S22 Ultra. It can actually be a bit scary to hold just on its own. You feel like you're gonna snap it or something. Snap on a case and that pretty much solves your problem. It's a little bit more chunkier and it's a bit more nicer to hold. It gives you a bit more of that grip. Now, despite the size, it's not too heavy either. Without the case, it's super light. With the case, it does add a little bit of a bulk on, but I've been using it, you know, kind of holding it and using it, and my hands haven't necessarily got too tired. But this obviously depends on how I'm sitting, and a lot of the time I just do have it kind of propped up on a table or against something. The weight doesn't really impact me a lot. If you're chucking it in your bag, it's not going to add a significant amount of weight. It's definitely still lighter than your average laptop. And now, this is the first Samsung tablet, and I think the first tablet to offer Super AMOLED. Before, Super AMOLED was something that they had primarily in their phones, but this is the first tablet to feature it in the tab itself. Now, the screen is super sharp and bright enough for indoor use. I haven't actually tried using it outside, but then again, I wouldn't really see why you would. Like, I don't see myself ever kind of walking around holding this outside. It's not like your phone where you'd need to have those super high number of nits of brightness on your phone display because you're going to be using it outside a lot of the time. Whereas with the tab, you're either going to be using it indoors or in a cafe or at home. So if you're like me and you're using it inside, then that's definitely not going to be an issue for you. In terms of video playback, the playback quality is absolutely amazing. It captures nice vivid colors. It's rich. I don't think capturing on video does it justice in terms of how nice this thing looks. So if you do want to check it out, I would definitely recommend heading over to your local Samsung store or wherever they have this displayed and checking it out for yourself, because this thing looks amazing. It's super nice to watch content on because of that wider aspect ratio. The content tends to fill out more of the screen, so you get less of those big black bars, and when you do zoom in, you do get less cropping, so that makes watching stuff on it really, really nice. On top of that, the bezels are super thin, so that makes the overall aesthetic of the tab look much better. Now, the thin bezels can lead to some accidental touches, which I have kind of experienced myself, but it's not to the extent that it would bother me. It's usually when I'm sitting in like a really awkward position, laying down or laying back on my sofa where that happens. For the most part, I haven't really noticed it. Now, one thing to note, that there is a notch on this tab, which is really funny because once upon a time Samsung did make fun of Apple for adding that notch onto their devices, but now they've done it here. You've got two cameras up here in this screen notch. To be honest, it doesn't really bother me because I'm used to having a notch. I have an iPhone, I have a MacBook Pro, both have the notches, and you know, I'm just kind of used to seeing the screens with the notches on them, and it's not really a massive deal breaker. There are some apps which might get covered by the notch, especially when you're playing games and stuff like that, and the notch does tend to sometimes get in the way, but for the most part it's just there. You don't really notice it, and you'll get used to that being there if you're a Samsung user and you've not really ever used a device with a notch before. Now of course, when you're watching content, you are either going to be using headphones or you're going to be watching it straight out of the tab. If you're watching it straight out of the tab, then the audio from these speakers is actually also really good. It's quite clear, it's audible, and it's actually really loud. Like when you turn the volume up to max, it can get quite loud. So the speakers are really powerful. A lot of the time I will just watch stuff straight out the tab, and I've not had any problems with that whatsoever. Now moving on to the camera. Now I would never usually use a tablet camera to take lots of pictures and stuff with, unless you're doing things like scanning documents. So I do want to mention that there are two cameras on the back here, on the rear. You've got an ultra wide and a wide camera, as you would do, and then you've got those two cameras on the front up there hidden in the notch. Now the front cameras are the ones that you would probably pay more attention to, especially if you're going to be using your tab for things like Zoom calls. They are great quality. It is a 12 megapixel camera that you've got here at the front, and I think a 13 megapixel camera on the back. Now the best thing about the cameras on these Samsung tabs is the positioning. They're positioned right bang here in the middle, and that is absolutely fantastic because most of the time if you're going to be using the front facing cameras, you're going to have your tab propped up on the table like this, and you're going to have the cameras in the middle instead of like off to the side there. So when you're looking at the camera, it's much more natural, it looks much better. And one of the cool features that this has as well is an auto framing feature. So you can go ultra wide and have an auto framing feature where it keeps you kind of in frame as you move around. It's not as smooth as I think I would have liked it to be. I've played around with the one on the iPads for a bit, and that's a lot smoother. However, it does do the job. I don't know why you would be moving around significantly when you're in a Zoom call, but I guess if you're one of those people who does tend to do that, then this thing will definitely keep you in frame. Now in terms of performance, I think this thing is absolutely fantastic. It has not disappointed me whatsoever. I've used it quite heavily for a lot of things, and tried to push it to its limits as much as possible. I haven't done any benchmarks on it myself because I'm not about that life. Now other benchmark reviews that have pitted this against the M1 iPad Pros have put the M1 iPad Pros on top. However, in terms of real world usage, I think that this thing doesn't shy down in terms of performance. It's plenty powerful as it is. I've used it for things like video editing, gaming, multitasking, running multiple apps at the same time, and it hasn't stuttered, it hasn't lagged. I haven't faced any kind of issues with it at all, especially with things like Lightroom, which is quite power intensive, power hungry. When I was using Lightroom on my Tab S7, I did find it stuttered a bit and it was quite difficult sometimes to kind of use. It wasn't as smooth an experience as I would have liked it to be. However, on this, it's much smoother, it's much more snappy, it's quicker. I do find editing on this a lot more comfortable. So in terms of performance and using it for things like editing, the larger screen and the kind of power it packs into it is definitely a really good combo. Now gaming on this has been quite smooth as well. Now generally I would not game on a tablet. Now the only game I do play quite a lot is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. However, I tend to play that a lot more on my phone, but pretty much on all my devices, the two games that I would generally have if I'm ever bored or I'm going somewhere are Genshin Impact and Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and I've tried both of these on this tab and they perform really well. I've set them to high performance mode, and here you can see some gameplay of me playing Genshin Impact, and as you can see, it's really nice, it's smooth, there's no stuttering, no lagging, the quality looks amazing, the colors are looking really good. The tab did get a little bit hot after a while. You'd expect that from any device if you're going to be gaming on it for a significant amount of time, and playing Master Duel on it is absolutely amazing. I love having it on a big screen, and it's just really nice to have. It's one of my favorite games because I just love Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's one of the easiest and nicest games I have to play on the tab. So if I was going to be playing any games on the tab, it would most likely be Master Duel over Genshin Impact, just because Genshin is a bit awkward to play on screen. However, you can connect controllers. So for those of you who do like gaming on the tab, you can connect controllers, and that will work with some games. So the Xbox controller or the PS4 controllers can pair up to the tab. You'd have to check the compatibility yourselves for which games work with the controllers, which don't. Now in terms of other productivity uses, I do tend to use this a lot for my content creation in terms of scripting and other types of content creation, like I said, with Lightroom and editing. And having multitasking features that this tab gives and the Samsung Galaxy Tabs in general is absolutely amazing. You can have up to 3 windows on screen at the same time, plus additional kind of hovering windows on the screen. You can watch a video, have a browser open, have your notes or whatever it is that you're going to be doing all at the same time and more. And this thing doesn't struggle with that at all. And the bigger screen makes that an absolute dream to have all of that open on, because you've just got that much more real estate. You know, your video looks bigger. Everything you're doing is bigger. It's basically the multitasking experience is bigger and better with this larger display. Now, one other thing I want to mention about this tablet is, as with previous Samsung Galaxy Tabs, this thing has Dex Board built into it. That means with a touch of a button, it can turn into an essential full-blown desktop powered by Android. Now, this is super handy if you're going to be using it as a do-it-all device. So if this is your primary device for whatever you're doing, then that is an amazing feature, because it essentially goes from a tablet into a laptop. You can hook it up to an external screen, you can hook it up to a keyboard and mouse, and you can use it essentially as you would use a desktop or a laptop, and it's really handy. You can open up multiple windows. You've got your desktop kind of display as you would with all of your icons or your apps on your screen. It's super handy to use it in that mode because it makes it easier to use a keyboard and mouse with it, especially if you've got the keyboard cover that comes with it and you want to make full use of the functionality that the keyboard cover gives. Then using it in Dex mode is definitely a good idea. I personally don't like using it in Dex mode very much. I tend to keep it and use it as a tablet. Now, you can set the tab up so that as soon as the keyboard is attached, it automatically goes into Dex mode. Now, mentioning the keyboard cover, I think this is definitely one of the best accessories that you can purchase with the Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra or any of the Galaxy Tabs. This is a fantastic buy. This particular one for the Tab S8 Ultra RRPs are about, I think, £299. It's really expensive, but it's definitely worth the buy just because it improves your productivity so much and it gives you that right level of protection that you want for the screen and the back. Now, if you're lucky enough to have pre-ordered this thing before the 24th of February, then you're definitely going to get one of the keyboard covers for free. So that's an absolute bonus. However, if you're unlucky enough that you pre-ordered it afterwards, it is a bit of an expensive buy, but I still think it's definitely worth it. I did a whole review on the keyboard cover for the Tab S7 and I give all my opinions on why I think it's such a great accessory to have with these tablets. Now, the keyboard is much better quality this time, I think, and this time, especially with the Tab S8 Ultra one, it does have a backlight. This is something that I missed with the one for the Tab S7. It didn't have a backlight. Using it in low light was a bit annoying. Sometimes I like using it in bed, but with this one, I don't have that issue. It has a backlight. The function keys at the top have a range of shortcuts that are really handy to use when you've got the keyboard attached, so you don't have to kind of reach up to the screen to do things. It types really well, it's really responsive. The keys have minimal travel. It feels like I'm typing on a laptop when I'm typing on this, but I do want to say that I prefer typing with it on a desk or a stable surface rather than on my lap, because it does feel a little bit more flimsy when it's on my lap. Now, the best thing about it is it's actually detachable, so you can just take the keyboard off and use just the back cover itself. Now, this back cover is also magnetically attached, so it's really easy to kind of take on and off, and it has this kickstand, so it makes it really nice and easy for you to prop the tablet up on a tablet or a surface to use it and not have to hold it all the time. Now, one of the best things about this cover is that it has this little enclosure at the back where your S Pen lives. So your S Pen will be docked onto the back of your tab charging, and this enclosure just covers this up, which means that you don't have the risk of your S Pen kind of just falling out and you losing it or not knowing where to put the pen. You can just kind of open it up. Once you've done using your pen, open it up and pop it back there in the enclosure. It can be a little awkward to kind of find sometimes, but that's absolutely fine. After a little bit of practice, you'll pretty much get used to knowing exactly where the pen goes. Now, I do want to mention, like I said before, the keyboard cover can be a bit flimsy to use on your lap, especially when you've got the keyboard itself attached. The kickstand at the back doesn't exactly balance the tab properly, especially if you've got it on a lap or an uneven surface. It can fall and it's really awkward to use the keyboard like that. I would prefer if they did something similar to iPad's Magic Keyboard, which looks like it's a lot more sturdy, and even if you're using it on your lap, it holds the tab up really nicely. The downside of that one is that you can't really use it as easily without the keyboard. That's a whole-in-one package, it's all attached together, whereas this one, you do have that option of taking the keyboard off. Now, last but not least is the S Pen. This is pretty much the big reason why I got this. Now, for Samsung Tabs, the S Pen comes in the box with the tab. You don't have to purchase it separately, which is an absolute bonus and was one of the main reasons why I bought this over the iPad, despite the fact that I have pretty much an entire Apple ecosystem. I have a MacBook, I have an iPhone, I have a Mac Mini. I really rely on the Apple ecosystem for all of my content creation and workflow. However, this is the one exception that I'm willing to make because I can pretty much integrate and sync all of my things with the tab quite easily. I use OneDrive for most of my content and saving all of my content on, so it's pretty easy to incorporate the tab and its functions with the Mac. I know it's very controversial and contradictory and people are going to come after me about this, but this is the one thing that I'm not going to compromise on. Anyways, that being said, the S Pen. So the pen itself has now been updated, so you've got a new version of the S Pen which has much more reduced latency, even so than before, which makes it really nice to kind of use it for writing and drawing. It gives it a much more natural feel and it feels like you're actually writing on paper. There is absolutely no lag or latency when using it. It almost feels like using a real pen. I love all the quick action features that the pen and the tab come combined with. You know, you can press this little button here and get a menu to pop up exclusively for the S Pen, where you can choose apps that you want to go into or things that you want to do with the S Pen. It does also have those gimmicky air action features. I never really use those much because I don't want to be sitting there waving my pen at the tab. I'd much rather go to Hogwarts if I'm going to be waving sticks at things. You know, I don't really use those. They are probably handy if you're going to be having your tab a little bit further away from you, but I don't really see why you would be sitting with the tablet kind of that far away where you need to use air actions. It is what it is. It's a cool feature, but I don't see myself using it very often. Now, in terms of just writing with the tab, it feels amazing. I really enjoy using this tab for writing notes and things with. This is one of the main things that I will use the tab for, is note taking, especially for work, and doing lots and lots of notes. And it works seamlessly with things like it's the native Note app, as well as OneNote for Microsoft OneNote, which is what I do all of my note taking in, and I've never had an issue. I really like the feel of it. I really like writing with it. It feels really natural to me, and it's a good kind of fluid experience. I also love the way the S Pen feels in my hand. It feels like a real pen. It's nice and slim. I don't like how bulky and weird the kind of Apple Pencil, I think it is, iPencil, Apple Pencil feels. I've kind of used it around in the Apple Store, and it just doesn't feel right to me. I much prefer the tab and the nib and the way this pen feels in my hand as well. So that's definitely a bonus for me. Overall, I absolutely love this tablet. Its size and functionalities are great. It has an amazing quality screen. It's great for watching stuff on. It's big, but still comfortable to use. The pen is great. Now, one thing is I would have liked it if the notch wasn't there, but again, I'm kind of used to it by now, so I don't really see why I'm complaining here. The keyboard case is great. It's a bit flimsy, but it does the job. The fact that it's detachable is amazing, because I pretty much 99% of the time use it with just the back cover on. And it may not be as powerful as the M1 iPad Pros, but it definitely packs a punch. And that's all, guys. I'm going to leave it here. I hope this video was useful for you guys. I hope it helped you make a choice. If you were thinking about getting this tab or any of the tabs in the Tab S8 line or anything else, then I hope this influenced your decision a little bit, whether you choose to get it or not. If you enjoyed the video, then make sure you smash the like and subscribe button. If you love my reviews and want to watch more of them, then why not check out these videos on the screen right now. Until next time, guys, this is Kai24 signing off.